In our last two episodes, we have had a wonderful, fascinating discussion with Mr. Tim Patterson, CEO, Economic Solution Group from Manchester, United Kingdom. Uh, the discussion kind of delved around wide-ranging topics, particularly what he wants to do in Bengal and in India, so that you can move towards our sustainability goal and the move towards those circular economy or green economy.
Yeah,
So we'll
definitely.
start from where we left in our last episode. So what, according to you, would be the ideal concept of fuel economy, which is very close to your heart, and you started with fuel economy solution
Many moons ago, Rick, as
yes.
we know. So in 2012, Fuel Economy Solution was the first business in the Economy Solution Group. And we have our own technology. It's a catalyst, a combustion catalyst for fuel. And one of the important things is that everyone's using fossil fuels at a huge rate, be it coal, be it diesel, gasoline, kerosene for aviation. So burning the fuel at a cleaner level, 75% reduction in black smoke particulates, that's important. But also if you can reduce by 5 up to 10% fuel efficiency, then the savings are significant in the marginal transport sector. One of the key areas of decarbonisation is in the rail sector, because everything moves through ship transport or by rail. Very little moves by freight. I know DHL, the world's largest logistics service provider, will disagree with the volume of freight, but in comparison to ships and rail, the air freight is very expensive and it's very, very small in comparison. Now, the aviation sector have got away with not being penalised for carbon emissions for a long time. That's now coming to an end. So the aviation sector are looking for new ways. But currently, we have ships that burn too much fuel, and we have road vehicles, we have mining vehicles that use diesel, and we have railway. Now, with the Indian Railways, for example, Ritvik, we have $2.7 billion contract in total US dollar equivalent in Indian rupees for typically large companies like Reliance Industries. They frequently win the, I think, is it 3 or 5 year interval supply contract for Indian Railways. Just by saving, even if it's just 50 rupees off a litre, or even just a fraction of the cost of a litre, just 10%, we can improve the economy for the government, split the difference with the diesel HSD service provider, and we can massively reduce the emissions of the trains going around the country. In the freight world, in the UK, we have DB Schenker, which is a Deutsche Bahn, a German company, very good German company, and they bought up many years ago the 66 loco version, 350 of those, and there's only 358 in fact, there's only about 450 of them in the UK. They form 80% of the UK freight backbone. So DB Schenker's stock actually form about 62% of our whole country's freight. So improving the efficiency in one model of locomotive actually can improve almost, in this case, 62% of British freight. So when we start to look and do a dissection, a feasibility review, if you like, with Indian Railways, we've created a concept paper, we've have it available for the Railway Minister, and ultimately, to offer to decarbonise the railways in a small way is the beginning, and then there's cost savings and the like. Now, one of the most important things with the DB Schenker's model is there's about 6,125 litres per tank. They use about 2 tanks a week. So it's a matter of treating one tank in the testing process at a time and measuring it accurately. So if you then start to look at road vehicles, we can introduce the green economy into decarbonisation. So onboard on-demand hydrogen fuel cell, we could put one of those into every vehicle over the age of 3 to 5 years where it's out of warranty, because the original equipment manufacturers wouldn't want anything being fitted that wasn't part of their repair and maintenance program. But a lot of the country, a lot of India and a lot of the UK, people, there's 36 to 40% of vehicles that are not new and are over 10 years old. So having that level of decarbonisation opportunity to introduce a hydrogen on-board, on-demand electrolyser we have a technology partner in the States that actually has access. They invented it many years ago, but the market wasn't right for hydrogen then. Now it is. And it doesn't need 700 bar storage and lots of clever engineers, which is what hydrogen fuel cell technology requires. So decarbonising transport starts with treating the fuel, and in Indonesia, for example, they use biofuel, they use palm oil added to the diesel for the ships as well. So the ships, they have to, per Tamina, blend the biofuel, the product coming from the plantations. So decarbonising through emissions and reducing emissions is one thing, but then when you move into the coal sector, you can't always decarbonise by burning less coal, but if you can burn coal more efficiently, i.e. capture the CO2, then that's another fossil fuel that we could make a saving on. Now, the CO2 is important because it's actually a source of carbon and oxygen. So if we can capture the CO2, we have a research team in Australia currently working through our biorestoration partners, and they are looking using fluidic oscillators, which are microbubbles, and it's a system where you bubble the CO2 through these plates of designed IP to capture the CO2 differentially from the rest of the flue gases. You can then apply another technology, which is a thermal lance technology, which again, we're separately looking at the investment opportunity for that. But we can split the CO2. Now, if you heat CO2 to a gaseous temperature of 7,000 degrees, you can create carbon in gas form. That can then be deposited onto rotating copper drums as G1 graphene. These are all at the what we call TRL stages 1 to 3. This is at the concept and moving into lab scale. And the lab scale is good, but it needs to be industrially large to make a massive difference. But by doing that, we can change the output of coal. Now, in the UK, we had a social fracture of the working classes and the government, and the coal industry was reduced by social discord. And a lot of the coal mines were shut down. Now the UK are happy the coal mines are shut down and they've moved on from then, but it wasn't the ideal way to transform the coal sector. But in India and other coal-based economies, you have the opportunity to capture the CO2 from your coal-fired power stations. This means if we can develop these technologies to process and produce graphene, one of the beautiful things about graphene is it's really strong, it's a dielectric, you can use it for energy storage. So
I remember, I mean, as you would also appreciate that doing away with all types of fossil fuels overnight is not possible,
no,
feasible or practical. So that's
not at
why
all.
The government of India had also kind of formed a special task force comprising representatives of different companies, large companies, who are one way or the other related to mining, maybe from the coal sector, maybe from the steel sector. Emin Dastur, their chairman, was possibly the head of this committee. Then all ministries who were concerned with this, they were also part of it. And the main focus of the research was how to capture coal, as you rightly mentioned.
Yeah.
So one of the ways the discussion came up with was to capture coal, CO2, and then put it very deep down the surface, so low so that the negative impacts of carbons are not felt. So now they are working on to whether that carbon which is stored deep down the surface can be used in some way or the other. So that is that is where the discussions at this point are. You were mentioning that
it's a difficult one, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, if we pump CO2, they're looking at doing that under the North Sea, the British government. But if you take CO2 and you just pump it somewhere else, you're throwing away money, you're throwing away revenue, you're throwing away future raw material supply, which is carbon. So it's important to store carbon, but there's this term carbon capture, utilization and storage.
Right.
So we utilize the carbon in CO2 as much as we can. So we may only be able to extract 30% of the carbon from CO2, in which case there's still 70% of the original carbon in the liquefied CO2. Store that, but put it through another process, rinse it in another not a Liebig condenser in chemistry terms, but rinse it through another technology process to sweat the asset that is carbon. Because if we're looking to store carbon or reutilize carbon, in a battery, when you have a graphene solid-state supercapacitor or electrostatic battery, the big problem that people think with supercapacitors is that it dissipates energy and it doesn't hold. Well, we're working with specialists in this field that own IP to stop the dissipation, so they only dissipate 2% energy per month. So over a year, if this was a graphene solid-state supercap to run your computer off, right, and there was no mains electricity and you're in the middle of nowhere, that would only lose 24% of its battery in a year. So this is important, because if you have solar and you have wind, if you don't use it, you lose it. Long term, if you have storage systems that don't catch fire, like lithium ion does, and they're lower cost because huge volumes of coal carbon capture utilization can then be used to create large-scale graphene production. You then produce large, low-cost raw material for batteries that can go onto ships, because most ships, apart from inland waterway, lithium ion is a risk, because you're only 50 meters normally from the bank of a river, you know, in the Ganges or whatever. So that's okay, but open water shipping will never go electric vehicle fully deep water. They'll go small modular reactor or micro reactors. But we're working with a EV marine company who they're based in Odisha, and basically they've got a fantastic range of boats for micro, small, up to the larger passenger ferry, 30, 40 people. But what we want to do is we want to do some interaction with them on some decarbonisation projects and some water cleaning projects, lakes, watercourses in India, using their electric vehicles on the water. So they're doing great things, and we're having discussions with them this week. And we hope it becomes a great business between the UK and India. And one of the key things is this graphene story is yet to come. The carbon economy is coming. Measuring living carbon so that we can reduce the damage done to the Earth's atmosphere is the key to whether it's investable or not. So we can talk about that another day, because carbon accounting is going to send everybody to sleep. But capturing CO2 from coal is key, and that feeds into the circular economy, which obviously we can go into a few more details if you wish.
I think now that we have come to what circular economy is all about, we can discuss about it in our next episode. But
okay,
for now, thank you so much once again
for
throwing lights on one of the most important aspects of today's life or society, which is not only decarbonization but making good use of that carbon. And
absolutely, it has to be viable, has to be economic, and it has to put food in the fridge for everybody. It can't just be for saving the planet. We need society and economies to survive.
Like we expect all people to be multitasker, we want all these solutions to be kind of multi-purpose as well.
Yeah.
So that it's just as we mentioned, that it's not just about capturing carbon, but making further meaningful usage.
Absolutely. I mean, I call it an onion skin layer model. So no matter which way you go, you're creating additional value-add benefits. And just one point of note, there was a lot of carbon capture work done in the last 30 years and not a lot of success. But there wasn't a carbon economy developing, and there wasn't a need for supercapacitors. You know, capturing carbon, if you go to Boundary Dam in Saskatchewan, they had a problem with capturing CO2 because 45% of it went into the atmosphere. They couldn't retain it in this idea of pumping liquid CO2. And what the oil companies were going to do is they were going to use the liquid CO2 to pump into the aquifers and the geological structures containing the last bits of oil or gas to try and displace the fossil fuel to retrieve it. Now they call that enhanced oil recovery. In 30 years, and this isn't me, this is the international, it's the IEA, and it's their Clean Coal Centre, or Centre for Sustainable Carbon as it's now known. And the IEA Clean Coal Centre did a report saying 20 years of carbon capture and storage, and that it basically failed because 3 of the 4 projects that worked, after 20 projects, so only 16 of them failed, and only 3 of them out of the 4, they were used for recovering more fossil fuels. So we need a new success story, and carbon capture for graphene and energy storage batteries to store every millivolt that we capture from the sun and the wind. That is really moving the needle forward.
So let's end on that spirited note, and at a point where it's sunny side up. So let's hope.
Definitely. That's how I like my eggs as well.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
Rinod.
much once again.
Take care, sir.